Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual Bourbon. My name is Steve Akley, and we have a fun event today. We've got Wes Hardin back here. And of course, if that is the case, we know that we're going to be talking about Dusty. So we've got a special one here. It's a 1972 Ancient Age. So Wes will be telling us all about the brand. And as usual, we'll be tasting the current version as well as this Dusty version. And at the end, we will vote on two things: which one is our favorite, as well as which one we think is the Dusty. We will have a new champion as of tonight because our current champion did not submit any sort of guess. So you have to continue your streak by getting it correct each time. So his streak ends at 8, I believe. So that comes to an end. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wes Hardin to tell us about Ancient Age. What's going on, Wes?
Hey, Steve, how's everyone doing?
Good. Yep.
Good.
Yep.
All right. So just a quick reminder. I think everyone knows kind of how we do it, but just to remind everyone, we're going to go through. I'm going to prompt everyone to sample. You should have 2 samples, a 1 and a 2, labeled on the bottle. You go ahead and pour those if you want to. We're going to ping everyone at certain times, so we'll start tasting and nosing those. I'll go through the history of kind of the brand. In this case, it's going to be brand and distillery. Hold your thoughts on which one you like the best and which one you think is the Dusty until the end, if you please. Obviously, tasting notes and flavors and so forth are perfect. But I think with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we are sampling Ancient Age. We obviously have a Dusty. It's a 1972 Ancient Age 6-year 90 proof. And then we actually have a modern day, a non-age stated 90 proof. So it's a pretty good comparison. Just real quick, not to go through any brand history, but just to kind of give you an idea of Ancient Age. So it's the current Ancient Age is high rye mash bill off of Buffalo Trace. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. Ancient Age brand has had quite a few different age statements and proof combinations over the years. So over the years, they've had a 10-year 90 proof. They've had a 6-year 90 proof. They've had a 6-year 86, 10-year 86. They've actually had a 6-year 80 proof. And then they've had non-age stated 90, 86, and 80 proofs as well. And then they also had a non-age stated couple of different options. They had a AAA, triple stars, what they called it as well. So Ancient Age is actually historically has been a pretty diverse brand. It seems like over the time they kind of used a shotgun approach, tried to hit a lot of different customers and different age range and different targets for proof. But basically they're historically 80 to 90 proof, which is pretty common up until the recent years of everyone wanting super high octane, high proof barrel strength type of items. Again, today the shelf version is a non-age stated 90 proof. So we're comparing apples to apples. Other than the age statement, the proofs are the same. Obviously, made quite a few years apart, 72 versus today. What I'm going to do, let's start with sample 1 real quick, and then I'll jump into the first half of some of this history here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Kind of cherry cola-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, cherry
Yeah.
cola with a little bit of leather almost to me.
Yeah. It's nice.
Definitely cherry. Oh yeah.
Very much cherry, which is makes sense because I get a lot of for whatever reason I like it because it's one of my favorite, but I get a lot of cherry out of Buffalo Trace. Seems to be a common theme there.
Yeah. Anything else anybody getting besides the cherry cola thing?
I like the nose.
Yeah, I do too. That's solid.
A lot of spice in it.
Yeah.
In the nose.
Yeah. All right, let's taste it. Little chocolate to get the cherry on the taste too. So maybe like chocolate covered cherries or something like that. So at least that's what I'm getting as I taste it.
I'm getting a nice, actually, to me, drinks a little bit spicier than a 90 proof.
Yeah.
It's got a nice little Kentucky hug on it for sure. Pretty good mouthfeel on it.
Mm-hmm.
Not super syrupy in the glass. I mean, it's not the shortest or the longest legs, but it definitely has a good mouthfeel.
Yeah, that warmth kind of sticks around mid palate for me.
Yeah.
So that's where it lingers. Yeah.
Starts to build after a while too, and in the whole mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the cherry really comes through. It's like it's heavy cherry, almost like a Luton's cough drop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That finish really builds.
Yeah.
Really.
Jason, how about you, man? What are you getting?
I agree with Fred. The finish, I mean, it wasn't much there, but it builds and kind of gives you that
Yeah.
Kentucky hug.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting for a 90 proof, but it's very pleasant.
Yeah. 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 Joe, how about you, man?
Go on mute, Joe.
No, he was talking. Yeah. Joe's on mute.
There you
There
go.
you go.
Sorry. I don't have much to add. I think it kind of tastes like Noah's Mill or the other one that Willett makes.
What is the other one? Oh,
I forget
Creek,
the name of it.
Rowan's Creek. Yeah.
They drink way hotter than the proof on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are high rye too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Now, Rob, how about you, man?
This tastes like the reason I join these calls. I love this stuff. This one makes like my salivatory glands just like wake up. You know,
It's good,
like,
right? Yeah.
It's mouth coating. It's syrupy. It's allspice. It's cherry. I mean, it's fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk
All right.
to Team Mace. Let's get the Maces to weigh in, and then we'll get Bill to give a final.
Just real quick, there's a
Yeah.
33% chance that a Mace is going to leave this event as the head of the guessing it correctly just by the math.
All right, Kent, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, it's pretty much what everybody said. There is something else in there. I can't put my finger on it.
Okay.
It was in the smell test, and it's in the taste test as well. But it's very good. I agree with Rob. I like this a lot. It's good stuff.
All right. Jump down to Robert Mace.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot to add to what everyone said. I think it's the dominant flavors are pretty clear. The spice, the cherry, very thick syrupy, very good. But yeah, I don't have any unique insights to add to this one.
All right, Nate, you're the last one to ask to weigh in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that struck me was less about the flavor and more about like the mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It really just, I mean, I got some of that chocolate and it fills up your mouth and kind of coats it, kind of like eating some chocolate.
Yeah.
And it's pretty warm too. I really like this. It's good.
I like it a lot too. Yeah.
Me too.
All right, let's jump up to Bill. Bill, does this get your approval or not?
2 thumbs up. I really
Two
like
thumbs up.
this.
Wow, man.
Okay. Okay.
It was
That's
gonna
good.
be it was gonna be I like it or 2 thumbs up. I didn't know which one.
Yep.
You guys were talking about the cherry. I think that specifically it's those cocktail cherries that are in
Okay.
that syrup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
I like it really
Okay.
good.
All right. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
Bill, I may have put cocktail Luxardo cherry syrup in yours instead of bourbon though. No.
I think that's what it is.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if you would catch it or not.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is smooth and sweet. It's nice.
Smooth and sweet. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Heck yeah.
All right, let's you guys keep on enjoying. I'm going to jump into some of the history. So as I got into the history of ancient age, it's been around for a while, but it's not the distillery was called Ancient Age at one time, but it's not a heritage family distillery. It's just kind of a step along the way of a longer story. So what I decided to do was actually go back and just kind of do a Reader's Digest version of the distillery it comes from, which is modern day Buffalo Trace. and kind of start there. And then along that path, we'll jump into the introduction of the H&H brand. And there's some kind of cool things and that still go on today that I actually didn't know prior to this. So if you go all the way back, and I always like to say as legend has it, because a lot of our 17 and 1800s history is what it is. It's passed down more so than written. But as we know, Daniel Boone passed through Leestown, what they called the Buffalo Trace. That's where the distillery ended up getting its name later in life. And there was a distillery built in Leestown, right there on the Kentucky River, where the distillery is now. A guy named Commodore Richard Taylor, he built the old Taylor House, which is still on site today. In 1811, there was a 3-story warehouse built there, and it was to store and prepare whiskey for shipment via the river, barrels obviously going down the river. About 40 years later, there was a small, but at the time considered modern, distillery was built there by a guy named Daniel Swigert, who I actually had not heard of prior to kind of looking through this. And in 1870, Colonel Taylor purchases the distillery and names it the Old Fire Copper, which is what we always know. So Colonel Taylor being that Colonel Taylor, E.H. Taylor. 1872, like they did back then, whiskey's getting popular, starting to expand, builds a larger, newer distillery on site. And then this is where Colonel Taylor starts becoming famous, and this is where the distillery kind of changed hands, probably for the better, because as good of a businessman he could be, he was also that bad of a businessman at times. But basically, between 1872 and 1878, he made some poor business decisions and ends up selling the distillery to pay off bankruptcy debt to George T. Stag. And then Colonel Taylor stays on to run the plant, which we know. 1881, warehouse A and B are built. Those are the first 2 major warehouses. They're actually still there today. 1882, like a lot of distilleries did back in the day, they burnt in what they call the Great Fire, but it's rebuilt pretty much immediately, considering how long it takes to construct anything back in those days. The newly constructed mashing and fermenting wings of the building that they built in are still there today. And then in 1885, warehouse C goes up. It's still standing today. So anyone, I think most everyone on this call has probably been to Buffalo Trace. It's really just it's a living time machine of what happened in the 1800s, the early 1900s, all the way till now, and all those buildings and everything have been there for a while. And it's kind of interesting to see how much of that structure there is that old. In 1886, the steam heating system for the warehouses was installed, and they were considered one of the first distilleries to use steam heat, which was back then kind of a way of what we call today cycle heating in the warehouse. So obviously that helped aging the whiskey. The 1904, the distillery changed its name to the George T. Stag Distillery. Part of it was paying homage to George T. Stag, but there were some other pieces. There were legal battles with copyright names with Colonel Taylor and trademarks and so forth. So they moved it to the George T. Stag Distillery. It stayed that way. Prohibition hit. GTS Distillery did receive one of the medicinal licenses and continued producing and selling medicinal whiskey. So that helped keep it operational through Prohibition. In 1929, it was purchased by Shinley, and they became one of the big 5 spirits company coming out of Prohibition. So there was some people argue it's the big 4. I think it's the big 5, but either way, there's 4 or 5 huge companies that birthed themselves out of Prohibition. So all of the distilleries and labels and brands and whiskey that went under because of Prohibition, the companies that did not either merge or did not get their medicinal license end up falling into sale to one of the big 5. And they kind of dominated the American whiskey industry from post-Prohibition all the way up until the bourbon bubble deflated into arguably 70s, definitely 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. In 1933, Prohibition ends, obviously, as we know. I didn't know this, and and maybe I should know this, but I didn't. But at the time that Prohibition ended, there were only 4 Kentucky distilleries that were capable. Doesn't mean that there weren't more that still had structures and built, but Prohibition lasted for so long. And over the years, all of the distilleries that did not get their medicinal license, they were stripped of valuable resources. Some of them were sold off, some burnt, some were raided, whatever the case is. But at the day of Prohibition ending, there were only 4 distilleries left that had the capability to start immediate production. Now, there were others that came along, weeks and months later and so forth, but it was kind of interesting to know that, we went from a country that had hundreds, if not thousands, if you count all the little small farm guys, we went from hundreds and hundreds of distilleries in the matter of 13 years down to literally 4 in Kentucky that could actually start day one when Prohibition ended and start back up production and run. Again, others quickly got on board, but it's a pretty big statement. If you just want to wrap up what Prohibition did to the American whiskey industry, that's probably one of the most direct statements, short statements you can make. Is in Kentucky, where 95% of the nation's bourbon was produced, it basically whittled that industry down to 4 distilleries. So
yeah. And you know what else it did too is, but at the end of the day, it makes Kentucky king, because you had the 4 that were still there. You go before Prohibition, you're talking about kind of the Cincinnati area.
Oh yeah.
Was big. You're talking about Peoria, St. Louis, and but none of those survived. So coming out of Prohibition, while Kentucky only had 4, they had the only 4. And there's a rich history in those other states as well. But in reality, that's almost forgotten. And you think it is all about Kentucky now. It always has all been about Kentucky. But in reality, Prohibition truly makes Kentucky the winner, because that's where they persevered and that's where they come out of it. So
yeah, that American distilling location in Peoria was at one time, at least made its claim, but it could go toe to toe volume wise with anybody in Kentucky back.
What are the 4 companies, Wes?
So I don't know the actual. Well, I do know the distillery. So Stitzel-Weller was still up. APH Stitzel-Weller was up. Buffalo Trace, which was George T. Stag at the time. Brown-Forman was the 3rd.
National Distillers.
National Distillers was the 4th one, but I don't remember the exact facilities.
Right. They have so many brands. Yeah, because they were just snapping up brands throughout Prohibition. They just bought brand after brand after brand.
I'm pretty sure that the 4th one, which I think was owned by National Distillers at the time, was the original Bernheim in Louisville, I think. But I'd have to double check that. I think it was the original Bernheim.
So Buffalo Trace has 2 of those. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was one of the big guys. I mean, Shinley was arguably the biggest of the big 5 when it was all said and done. They had 4 when it was all said and done. They had the 4 big facilities in Kentucky, and then they had MGP or LDI or whatever you want to call it, Ross and Squibb now, which is a powerhouse. So from a volume standpoint, United Distillers and National Distillers may have owned more distilleries and brands, but pure volume output, Shinley was right up there at the top as far as part of the big 5. In 1937, they expanded the distillery. Again, every time someone adds equipment, it's state of the art. It's always in all of the history, everything's state of the art. In 1935, the famous Warehouse H goes up on the property, and this is the one that's got the metal. It's the metal clad warehouse. It went up simply because it was much faster to build a warehouse made out of metal than it is brick. It's as simple as that. What we know from our Blanton's event we had a while back, we also know from any book you read, any tour you go on at Buffalo Trace, or anytime you talk to someone like Fred or Freddie or anyone else, that's that warehouse is where the famous Blanton single barrels come from. So
they still handwrite it on all of them, even though it's always H. So it's pretty wild that they do that.
Yeah.
Fred, do they age anything else other than Blanton's in that warehouse?
No.
So that's going to be it. It's going to be Blanton's only. That's what I would think.
Are you sure? Are you sure Ancient Age isn't coming out of that?
Fred will check tomorrow.
It's the same mash. It's the same mash bill as Blanton's. No,
It sure does taste a lot like it.
It does, I'm telling you.
It's in a brick warehouse, the ancient age.
Okay.
Yep. In 1937, we talked about it on the Blanton's event. For anybody that wasn't there and doesn't know, the distillery went through. So they had the Great Fire before Prohibition. After Prohibition, they have the Great Flood, where the water is crested 17 foot above the power plant, and it's some miraculous, crazy team effort. They had the plant back up and running within days. Like you would think back in 1937 that a flood like that, it would take weeks and months to clear out and get the distillery back up. But they jumped on it and had at it. In 1942, they produced their 1 millionth barrel. So if you're on the Buffalo Trace barrel count, want to know where it started, 1942 was their 1 millionth barrel. And it's grown exponentially from there, obviously. So this is the point where I'm going to introduce kind of some of the ancient age brand history. So let's take a stop. Let's jump into sample 2.
Wes,
Yo,
you want to be a tour guide at Buffalo Trace? You're pretty damn
Absolutely.
good, man.
I would love to.
I know I
You
do.
nailed it. You
I'm
nailed
gonna,
it.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Fred's
freelance.
fact checking you right as you go, so he knows
You
all
nailed
this.
it, man.
Steve, that's we had Jane Bowie ask me if I wanted to go to Makers. So that's
Okay. He's getting some job offers now.
I'm gonna put out some competitive bids here. See what happens.
Right.
I would love to do that. That's a dream job.
Yeah. There you go.
Hardly
Full of
any
fruit.
knows at all.
Light nose.
Yep.
Pretty sweet on the nose. If what you do get. Very light, but
To me, I still get the cherry on the nose. It's not quite as prominent, but what I also get with it is mint, which is what I get out of a lot of ryes, high rye, or just straight rye whiskeys or Kentucky rye whiskeys.
yeah.
I get the mint, but not the cherry.
Yeah, I had to go in a couple of times and get it, but it's starting to.
Okay.
But I do like the nose.
All right, let's taste it. See what we got. Once again, for me, kind of fruity on the taste. I don't necessarily know that I'm leaning towards cherry versus just general kind of
Bowl of fruit.
bowl fruit. Yeah. Yeah. Fruit cocktail.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
to me like starts tasting a little more like a barely rye or barely legal rye whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of caramel, not a lot of like your bourbon flavors, but a lot of to me, I either get the very herbal, grassy notes out of rye, like the 95.5 or MGP, or in the Kentucky barely legal, I get more fruit mint type of stuff, and that's what this one has for me on the taste.
Very light rye spice finish. I mean, there is a little bit there like the last one, but nowhere near as the level where it just lingers and kind of builds. That's not going on here. Just kind of on passing a little bit of rye spice on mid palate, but that's it.
Anybody else have any?
Anything else for sure?
I even get a little bit of that young taste at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
Yep. Joe, how about you on this one? What are your thoughts?
I'm not a big fan of this one. I like the other one a lot better.
Mhm.
It's just kind of the flavors aren't as full and bold in this one.
Yeah.
It is a little hot, but not as hot as the other one.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
if you've got any of number one, go back and nose it. And I'm interested to see if there's any new notes that come out to you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of caramely and
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get caramel and
Oh.
like a barrel char.
yeah.
Like a
That's
burnt
outstanding. Yeah. Burnt caramel.
burnt
Yeah, burnt
caramel.
caramel on the
burnt
nose.
caramel. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, that one's good.
Yeah, it's interesting how your system works. And that's why I always
Ooh,
like.
now the other one smells like wine.
Yeah. Rob, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, not a ton to add. I think it just I get a lot of like fleshy white, maybe pear or
Okay.
apple or something. Yeah, very very light and a little astringency on the back end. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone
Anybody
else?
When I came back to the nose on the second one, after went to the first one, I almost got like a cinnamon, a big red
Oh
cinnamon.
yeah, cinnamon,
Okay.
definitely cinnamon.
Cinnamon. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can
yeah.
see that. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Robert, anything else from you on this one?
I don't see. I keep going back to the first one, and then when I go smell the second one, it smells like less and less to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
It's
I think you're-
slowly
It's like a
whittling
weak,
down to nothing.
yeah, it's like a weak cinnamon toothpick.
Yeah. Okay.
Those cinnamon flavored toothpicks get a little bit of the wood and the cinnamon, but it's not like doesn't overpower you.
Hey, well, not when I was selling them, man. I had the good ones.
I used to sell those.
They would light you up. The ones I had. You used to sell them too. Yeah.
Carried around a little prescription bottle full of them.
Yeah, me too.
Sure
Me
did.
too. I'd sell them in grade school. So that was a thing. That was a thing, man. I was a businessman. Nate, how about you, man? Anything you want to add?
No, not really.
All right. All right. Kent, last one to you, and then we'll throw it, of course, to Mr. Bill and see what he's doing tonight. But Kent.
See, I like this. I mean, I don't like it as, maybe I shouldn't say as much as the first one, of course, but
Mhm.
I mean, if I hadn't tasted the first one first, I would like this.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's not
I
offensive.
don't
We,
dislike it.
we've had some bad whiskeys through the years, and this is not bad.
It's true. We have.
That first one though, whew, that was something. All right, Mr. Bill, how about you, man? What's your verdict on this one?
I don't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a letdown after the first one, but it's not bad.
Yeah. I had somebody ask me today, do you like wine? And I don't, it's a weird thing because I don't dislike wine. I've never drank wine and been like, I don't like this, but then I also don't like it either. I never buy a bottle of wine or never drinking wine but if someone's got it and I'm at a situation, whether it's a dinner or a friend's house and they pour it, fine, but I'm never going to get it myself. I would never open a bottle. It's just, I like what we've got. I like taking a pour, corking it up, and I can revisit that later that evening, tomorrow, a month from now, and that's why I like bourbon. Wine, it's once you open the bottle, you're committed. So
It's too finicky.
yeah. And though they aren't cool people like the bourbon people, we're cool. They're too snooty with wine. All right,
They are.
all right, Wes.
All right. H&H, just jump in here. So H&H was first released in 1946. So the brand's been around since 46. It was kind of introduced as a flagship entry-level brand. So for, at the time, the George T. Stag Distillery, they decided they wanted to introduce this brand. And it was a pretty hot seller, like everything was from Prohibition till basically the 60s and 70s. They did have, between the 50s and 70s, they did have all those different iterations we talked about earlier, different age statements, different proofs. The 80 proof stuff didn't really come around until the 80s and 90s, once the bourbon industry declined. The 90 and the 86 were the two big popular ones. Mainly a 6-year age statement. They did have a couple of iterations were 10-year. I think, Steve, you and I had some of the 10-year at Bronner's during the poker game one night. I can't remember who brought it, but we had some up there that was pretty good. So, but yeah, so 50s through 70s, it's a hot item. It's a big deal. They're spitting it out left and right. In 83, two businessmen purchased H&H brand and the distillery. And they were the CEO and president of Fleischmann's. Ferdy Falk and Bob Baranakis, I think is how you pronounce his name. So what's interesting is, for years and years, I always triggered Fleischmann as my grandmom always had these little yellow yeast packets. That was what I always thought of Fleischmann's. And then I kind of started getting into the dusty bourbon, and I realized there was actually there is or was a Fleischmann bourbon brand. That brand actually came out of Owensboro, and it was either, I can't remember if it was Medley or Glenmore, but it was one of the two distilleries that came out of there. But they actually Fleischmann bourbon brand and whiskey brand. They had an American whiskey, they had bourbon, I think they had vodka, they had some other spirits. So they actually, and they did a lot on the non whiskey, a lot of fuel grade and chemicals and things like that. So much bigger company. Like as you get older and you learn brands are just brands within big companies. This is one of the ones that kind of hit me that way. But yeah, the two guys who were the CEO and president of Fleischmann's, they bought the distillery, and they bought the H&H brand, which is important for a little bit later. At that time, they started marketing H&H to be a little bit higher price, a little more premium. They started putting those higher age statements and proofs on it. And so they started kind of like pushing it as, hey, it's not bottom shelf anymore. Like we're moving up a little bit in the world. Fleischmann's was part of a subsidiary of Nabisco called Standard Brands. Their CFO was a guy named F. Ross Johnson. So in 1983, same year, Johnson sold Standard Brands. So he basically sold part of the Nabisco brand that had this alcohol and some of these other sections to it to a company called Grand Metropolitan. Never even heard of it. They eventually merged in with Guinness, who obviously became Diageo. So at one point in the world, the H&H brand and distillery was owned basically by Nabisco, is what it really amounts to, even though that wasn't what they stated. Grand Metropolitan, they already had a drinks section of their business, so this was an add-on. They had J&B Scotch, which I've heard of, never had. I hate Scotch. Smirnoff Vodka, who we've all heard of. After that sale, Falk and Baranakis, they thought they were going to get fired, so they actually resigned, and they decided to start their own company. And so Falk was a previous executive with Shinley. And so what he did, he approached the owners who owned Shinley, and they talked to him about selling some assets. So at the end of the day, Falk and Baranakis bought the distillery, but more importantly, they bought the H&H brand and trademarks specifically. They called their company Age International, still a company today. They actually believe that they were one of the first ones to actually believe, and this was getting into the 70s now, the 80s. They believed that bourbon growth was big overseas. They thought that with it declining in the US, they thought the market to grow would be overseas, specifically Japan, which is where a lot of people decided to try to grow, but they believed the growth was going to be overseas. And so they started shipping more overseas, but more importantly, along with the help of Elmer T. Lee, they were actually involved in the creation of the Blanton Single Barrel. So they were part of the team at Buffalo Trace or at H&H, along with Elmer T. Lee. Elmer obviously helped pick all the barrels and work through that. But behind the scenes on the marketing and the business side of it, those two guys were the ones kind of leading the Blanton Single Barrel. In 1991, Falk and Baranakis sold 22.5% of Age International to Japan's Takaro Shuzo. And in 92, they sold the rest of their shares for 20 million. However,
wow.
Yeah, so they sold the rest for 20 million. In 92, the distillery was purchased by Sazerac, who owns it now. But Takara was a really smart guy. So at this time, Takara owns Age International. He bought it from those two guys, but he kept the brand trademarks of the corporate entity. So in a lot of those bourbon crash deals where people are losing labels and subsidiaries and so forth, basically Sazerac bought the distillery, and then they came to a licensing agreement with Age International, very similar to what they did with the Van Winkles. Van Winkles owned the labels for Pappy and all of that, but Buffalo Trace does the contract distilling and aging and bottling and the whole nine yards. Very similar with H&H. One piece that Fred, that I was not 100% sure on, I think I am, but I'm not. Does Elmer T. Lee brand also fall into this agreement? Because I had read that it did.
did, but I don't think it does anymore.
Okay.
I think they only have Blanton's now.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not completely sure, but I'm almost,
Well, Blanton's and Age are the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still have
Yeah.
both of those. So
oh, yeah.
yeah, so in 92, Sazerac purchased the distillery, but Takara was smart enough to keep the brand trademarks and corporate entities. So basically that guy is sitting back and he's getting whatever the agreement was, whatever piece of the pie of Blanton's and H that are sold. This guy is not, he has no capital, no overhead. He's just getting paid to own brands and trademarks is what it really amounts to.
This is excellent research that you've done, because
Mhm.
this stuff's not easy to find out there.
No,
I've
it's
tried to
not.
look this up 100 times.
It took me a while.
Yeah, I've never understood how all this came together, but now it makes sense. I didn't know the Fleischmann's
how.
connection and all that. So yeah.
That's
Okay.
how.
Yeah.
And
Well, those
so-
Fleischmann guys did all right, didn't they?
Oh, they did. I mean,
They killed it. Yeah.
they jumped a ship that was splitting many ways, jumped on the right section
Yep.
and got in and out real quick and got their money for sure. I
Yeah,
mean, if you think
wow.
about it, they sold 22.5% of their stock. And then when they totally sold out, they sold for 20 million, and that was an 80 somethings.
Yeah.
So
It's not bad. It's
That's a
not
big
bad.
chunk of money, that long ago. And interestingly enough, today, Age International still is a company, and they still have that contract with Buffalo Trace to produce Ancient Age and Blanton. So not only did the two guys from Fleischmann's get away pretty well, I would say the winner of this whole scenario was probably the guy from Japan. If
Yeah.
you think about it, I mean, he's going to make money in perpetuity for one of, if not the most popular brands in bourbon there is, Blanton's. And then H&H is a high volume, middle to low shelfer that, has 60, 70 years of brand loyalty. So I'd say everyone came in, and Buffalo Trace came out, or Sazerac came out well. I mean, they've got one of the most polarizing bourbons out there, Blanton's. So they're not hurting anybody selling as much of that as they can. So yeah, it's H&H is one of those. It's a brand about. It's not. It doesn't have a crazy family history backstory. It's just someone came up with the name, and then it just kind of became this weird American business subsidiary trademark kind of label more than anything, which was probably the most interesting piece of it for me to kind of pull up. That's why I wanted to go through a lot of the distillery history to kind of, that's the real history under this brand. But it's interesting how it changed hands and how, it's one of the few bourbon stories. You hear a lot of these stories, like the Damp, for instance. So the Damps have a long history. Like I still say, when you look at Kentucky bourbon family, Mount Rushmore, it's a hard case to argue the Damps are supposed to be up on that Mount Rushmore as far as families go. And they were one of probably the worst case stories where they lost not only their brand, but their rights to use their family name and the whole 9 yards. And now they're back in the industry, but they can't even mention, their family name and any of their labeling or anything like that. But this is one of the few stories where it seems like as a brand was created and bought, passed through and moved around, that it seemed to produce winners along the way. I don't feel like anybody got left out to dry in kind of the progress of this H&H brand.
Yeah. That is really, really cool. Really great story. And excellent job, like I said, putting all that together. So
Yeah, it was there's a lot of, like everything, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So took a while to weed through the BS and what I thought was right. So
I like to drink mine out of grenade shaped bottles. Tastes a lot like Blanton's to me.
it's supposed to.
Right.
I think it's if you take a look at it, and we'll go through the voting or whatever, but when it's all said and done, the Dusty in this case is 6-year age stated. We know that today's Ancient Age is not age stated, which means I think it's closer to probably 3-year, Fred, maybe.
I would guess 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's half the age. And I think it's not going to be a shock to anyone, but when we vote and rate these, I think the two differences in the pours are definitely the extra 3 years in the barrel.
Yeah.
It's clear to me that the distillate, but obviously the distillate's not totally the same because it's 72 versus 2020 or whatever the case is, but it's not a different mash bill. It's the same proof. It's it's apples to apples outside of oak and wood is different now. You know, who knows from a distillation standpoint and entry proof level, I'm sure that's different now compared to, you know, the 70s and 60s. So, but yeah, it tastes, yeah, it
Listen,
tastes like what's supposed to.
In your research, did anything pop up on where you can still find 10 stars? So that the ancient age,
Yeah.
10 stars still available in like
It is.
Georgia and the Carolinas.
So
but
it's
very,
available.
very limited places.
Yeah, you can find it in certain states. I know you can find it in Michigan. You can find it in Georgia, the Carolinas.
It's in Ohio too.
It's
Ohio
in
has it?
Ohio. Yeah, it's in
Okay.
Ohio. I think it's like 12 states. I think
12
is the
states, okay.
distribution right now. Don't quote me on that. Fred may know, but I think it's 12.
Next
Triple-
road trip to Kentucky, I'm gonna hit Georgia on the way.
Yeah, the triple star. I've had it. It's actually good. It's closer to. It's probably today's closest equivalent to what this 6-year that we have in this tasting. I don't think it's not officially a 6-year. At one time, the triple star was the 10-year back in the 60s and
Uh-huh.
70s. The triple star was the 10-year. Yeah, it was 10-year, and I think they cut it down to 6, and then they just shrunk down production because of demand and supply, I'm sure, and just only allocated it to certain locations. But it's if you just see it, if you see a bottle of that and you pick it up, I think it's a 90 proof, if I'm not mistaken. You pick it up and just put it side by side to a current 90 proof, just ancient age AA instead of AAA. Night and day darkness. I mean, you can just tell by looking at the two bottles the difference. If you see that AAA, I would suggest grabbing it. It's going to be bottom shelf price for a really good pour.
Yeah.
Fred, Fred, you know anything about that? You know the AAA?
I got a bottle. Somebody was up near Ohio State University maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they called me and they told me they found some AAA, and I said, "Oh, pick me up a bottle." I looked at the age statement, 3.5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
It doesn't drink
Yeah.
that way to me. That's weird.
Yeah.
Well,
Interesting.
when I first tried the Ancient Age 90 proof, I was blown away that it was a 3.5-year-old bourbon.
Yeah, I would agree. I would
Yeah.
agree with that. The color of the AAA is what threw me off, but
Yeah.
we also know that the age statement is a minimum only, so it could be a mix of 3.5 to 6 or something
Yeah.
like that.
The one I
Sure.
hear everybody always talking about is a 10-year.
Yeah, they don't make it anymore, but if there's a dusty 10-year, a AAA
Oh,
10-year,
Yeah.
I actually think I have one, but
I've never had it.
Yeah.
I'd like it.
it's good. It's good. It's
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
look at that. He's got it. That's it right there.
There it is.
you dirty dog. There you go.
Oh, wait.
There's
Got
the
two
10
different
star.
ones.
That's the 10 star there. That's the one you can still get in certain states. Everyone DM Rob and he'll mule you as many 10
He-
stars as
Yeah.
any
Whatever you
10
tell him,
stars.
send him an order and he'll fill that for you.
This is actually the 10-year West. They had the.
Oh, that's
10-year
right. They did. They had a
before.
label
Yeah.
switch. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So that one's the old one.
Okay.
So if anybody, so pull that.
Wow.
Hey, Rob, do me a favor and pull the newer one up, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So if you're out, if anybody's out beating around in a city you've never been in, or maybe it's a city you live in, and you're down in areas where they have like old, crappy looking liquor stores, and you're brave enough to go in, take a look at the bottom shelf. But if you see any 10 triple, because you have to look at the very fine print to see whether it's 10-year or not, because for a while they took the year off of it. It just says 10 on it.
And it had
take a
10
look.
stars. Yeah. And they're like,
10
oh, it's
star
for 10
instead of-
stars. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar to what they did with the old Charter 8-year, and they
Right.
knocked off the year and just made it
Yeah.
number 8. There you go.
Yeah.
But if you're in some really old store, it looks like it's been around for a while, and you see any of those bottles, look at them really closely, because you may stumble upon an old one that's 10-year instead of just 10 star. The 10 star would still be good, but the 10-year for sure is going to be good.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. That's some pretty interesting stuff. Well, Rob,
Those
way
are
to go, man.
cool.
Felt like Vanna White there for a second. That was
I
fun.
know, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he added to this thing. So yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Anything
Well, we
else you got,
ready-
Wes?
No, that's That's
ready.
it. Again,
We're ready
it's,
to vote. We're ready to
it's-
lock in. Okay.
one of the few dusty brands that's kind of been at one distillery its entire life, but even though it's changed hands, so
Does anybody have a streak that they'd like to put forward to see what the record is? We will go back and check, so you can't just throw someone out there. Eventually, we would, if we get close to our record of whatever.
The
it is,
last
22.
event, I think Joe was correct. Bill was
Okay.
correct,
The last event, everybody was correct except for me.
except for
That's
you. I was going
true.
to say, I
That's
think
true.
Kent was the only one. So Kent's not eligible. If you're on the last event, you're eligible to be the winner or the
So
new
that-
leader.
Jason was on there, right? So Jason and the
What was
Mace.
the last Dusty? I can't remember.
Kentucky Tavern, the captainship bottle.
I don't remember if I made that one or not.
I don't
Okay.
think Jason was on there. Rob was on
Okay.
there, weren't
I
you,
don't
Rob?
think so.
Yep.
Yeah, Rob was on
Okay.
there. And
Okay.
the Maces were on there.
So we know of at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people with one. Anybody have longer than that? All right. The record stands at 1 right now. We've got 5 people going for 2. Mr. Bill, Joe.
I feel like
the Mace
I've gotten
brothers.
it more times than that, but
Yeah, I agree.
I don't
think-
remember.
I would agree.
Yeah. Well, we'll go back and search. So yeah.
We'll put Tim Swyatt on it.
Tim Swyatt, that'll be his role. It's actually on the individuals. We put it on them, but it's not like we have an official scoring system here. So we put it on. The onus is on you.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't tried to weasel his way into free events just to keep score.
Just to
for
keep score
everyone.
for us. Yeah.
Don't mention that to him.
Yeah. All right. With that,
Right,
it is
ready?
now time to vote. I will be giving you my vote, Wes, as well as the legend. So the legend also got it right last time, as did everybody else, other than Kent. So we know he's got a streak of at least 1. So
All right, let's start with Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill,
1 and 1.
1 and 1. I like it.
1 and 1.
Let's
So
go
that
with-
is his favorite, and he figures that is the older one as well. So that's what we're
Yep.
voting on, just as
Let's
a
go
reminder.
Kent Mace.
1 and 1.
1
I'm
and
gonna
1.
say whatever Bill says from now on. That way I'll be right.
Okay.
Let's go Nate Mace.
1 and 1.
All right.
Right.
Let's go Rob.
1 and 1.
Rob Mace.
1 and 1.
1.
Whiskey Joe.
What did everybody else say? 1 and 1.
1 and 1.
Jason.
1 and 1. I'm not gonna
1 and
budge
1.
the system.
All right, Fred.
No contest, 1 and 1.
No
1 and 1.
contest.
Mhm.
All right, Steve.
All right. The legend, by the way, said 1 and 1.
Mhm.
And I am gonna bet the house that it's 1 is the Dusty, and it's also my favorite too. So I also went 1 and 1.
Yeah, this is probably, I don't know, Steve. This has probably been the easiest one to determine.
Yeah.
I would say it's
From the visual in the glass to the tasting and everything else, it all just held up, and not a surprise here at all.
yeah, it was the two in the bottle looked a little closer in color, but when I started pouring the Dusty, I
that
was
that,
like,
that
oh,
color
man.
there is
I was
fantastic.
like, oh man,
It's
gonna be an
amber
easy one.
versus straw. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's it,
where
yeah.
that's where we're at.
Like,
so
yeah, some kind of weird goldenrod or something.
mhm.
But it happens. We've had all kinds here. Ultimately, we're always going to run into one that the Dusty was going to be clear. So this was it for sure.
Yeah, this was a real joy tonight.
I don't know if that's genuine or not.
I
have
don't
no idea
know.
what to think.
No, really. I had a good time.
Okay. All right.
Appreciate that.
So Wes, you said that the guy that kept the naming rights, I know he sold it in 92. Did you tell us when he bought it?
Yeah, 80. hang on.
I know it was after 83, but I didn't hear.
Yeah, he's Falk and Baranakis sold to Takara Shuzo in Japan in 91. He flipped it a year later.
Oh, a year later. Oh, that's
Yeah.
sick.
But I mean, he made a ton of money out of it.
That's
I'm
so
sure.
sick.
Yeah, he
And kept the
flipped it.
licensing. And kept
And
the
yeah, I
whole-
mean,
yeah,
he
that's
yeah,
where
it
you
was
get the 20. One of the greatest business deals ever, other than, there's a famous one in St. Louis. So the St. Louis Spirit was an ABA team back when they had the American Basketball Association. And when they were being merged with the NBA, they had one extra team. And they had to decide who was going to be out. So they decided on St. Louis team would be dismantled and folded, but they gave them a full share as NBA owners, and they've continued to have
wow.
it. You're talking about the time in the 70s having no TV rights or anything like that. So they get a full share of all that TV revenue, all that to this day And
After the
they don't even
dream
own a
team.
team. They don't even have any expenses. It's all just profit that comes in. So yeah, that's one of the greatest business deals ever. And it happened all by mistake. They got forced out, but they were given this golden parachute, which didn't seem too good at the time because, again, there wasn't a whole lot of revenue associated with the basketball at that time. But in the end, they won big time.
Yeah, that whole they did ESPN did a 30 and 30 on the ABA. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
So that whole thing was crazy.
There's some contract in Florida from 1981 for Weller. So if you're a liquor store down here, you can get everything from Buffalo Trace except Weller, unless you're
Wow.
ABC. They're the only company in Florida that can sell Weller.
Huh.
Is Florida a control state?
No,
No,
not.
That's weird.
I know, and
That
it's
is-
just
that
the
is
state of
weird.
Florida, as far as I know, is what the liquor stores tell me.
State to state alcohol rules are the craziest laws we probably have in the country. Like it's unbelievable, just state to state how.
And Weller rules are some of the weirdest rules. 'Cause
Yeah,
you go to
it's-
Ohio, you can get plenty of it. You go to Texas, other places you can't get it at all. So yeah, it's weird. Plentiful in some areas. So
Somebody's in somebody's pocket somewhere, I'm sure.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Like Wes said the other day on Facebook, there's a reason to get rid of the 3-tier system. It just isn't working. It's broke.
Yeah, the problem with it is the overhead cost of each distillery trying to ship to all of the locations and have warehouses throughout the country won't ever eliminate it. But I think you could take out some of the allocation BS
Yeah.
and some of that stuff. You could regulate it a little better to where they serve truly as a distribution group and a sales group where, let's take,
It's hard to mess with though, because not only do you have the fight from the
Yeah.
distributors themselves, but many of the distributors are the states.
oh
And
yeah,
of course,
the lobbies are too big. Yeah,
they're not
lobbies-
they're not going to get rid of their revenue. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough. It's a tough thing to fix. I mean,
It's
I
a
don't know
tough
how you
thing.
fix
Yeah,
it.
it's a tough thing
Yeah.
to fix. And if you think about it, yes, a Sazerac, a Beam Suntory, a Brown Foreman, big companies like that, if it meant keeping or improving their volume, yes, they would go out and hire a large sales force. They would go and build or acquire distribution warehouses in strategic areas, and they would take that on themselves because they have the overhead to manage it and do it. But a Distillery 291, any of your small, or even like a
Oh yeah, even like a new
wilderness,
riff,
even like a
riff.
wilderness
Yeah,
trail
yeah,
or
yeah.
anyone like that, that's, a new riff, or any of the ones that are going to be big but aren't big yet or on their way, they would go out of business. They can't handle the overhead of that kind of expansion. So
If they're smart, they'll follow blueprint on that, distributing those releases online. They got people in line and sell it stuff in 10 minutes.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of it's going online, but I think a lot of states are not going to get beyond their shipping laws and get the Bible Belt states that have the whole, oh, what if a kid picks your package up off the
Yeah.
porch? Oh my God,
It seems to be kind of the Wild West right now. I mean, literally, if you've got the cojones to do it, I think anybody can ship. Distilleries, and that, but for the most part, it's not legal. So what they're doing until they get all cracked down on it's right now. It's it seems like anything goes. I mean, it's against the law in Missouri, but there are liquor stores here that will ship, no problem at all. I mean,
yeah, there's a guy in, I think he's in Kansas, if I'm not mistaken, Kansas or Iowa, I don't remember which one, who used to run a private barrel group, and then he ended up buying Ace Spirits. I think it's Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. But they were asking him like where can he ship to and so forth. And his comment was, I ship wherever the customers are until a state sends me a letter that says don't ship there, and then I stop shipping there. He said basically the penalty is they send you a letter or or send an email that says, hey, we got you, don't do it again, it's against the law. Then as long as you stop doing it, no harm, no foul, they won't go after you. So he just
that's a good way to do it, I guess. Yeah.
He just basically doesn't ask for permission. He just does it until someone says don't do it again.
Yeah.
Jim Beam and Makers won't ship to me, but I bought stuff from other distilleries that do.
Yeah, it's very I think the way they're going to get around it is you're going to see, and they're already started with like some of these clubs where these third-party online companies are really the distributors, And so if you want to get involved in, I know the Jim Beam's new Hardin's Creek line, they're running those in package deals through a couple of online distributors where Beam just sells to those guys. It's up to them on who they want to ship to. You're not ordering from Beam, you're ordering from them. Beam just has the link and you zip right over to Mash and Grape or whoever the hell it is. And do
And
the
Wes
orders
collects
that
his
way.
commission check for the use of the last name.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I'm
nice.
coming after him hard and heavy.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I'm gonna call Brian Hare. We're gonna go toe to toe with Beam Satori.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
I'm gonna hit him twice because one of the versions is Jacob's Well, and that's my son's name. So I'm gonna hit him twice.
Yeah. Oh,
Totally robbing our family names here.
They're raiding the Wes Hardin closet is what they're
Yeah, I
doing.
know.
It's taking all your
Cease and desist are coming.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call
Westwater's coming.
Yeah, I'm gonna call the Van Winkles and learn how to do it.
So there you go. That is our tasting of 1972 Ancient Age. Great job today. Let's hear from Mr. Wes Hardin.
Very
Hello.
good.
Wes, you have 3 more events coming up on the books. Let's talk about each of these and tell us why we should be attending them. We do have tickets available to all of them. The next one up is going to be July 18th. That's your 1960s Crown Royal. What do we think
So
about that one?
this is a fun one. I thought I was trying to think of something different. Crown's a super popular brand of whiskey. We know it's not bourbon. We know it's not American whiskey, but it's super popular. And I'm really curious to see. There's a couple of things. The one thing that really intrigues me, and I want to save it for the history part of it, so I don't want to ruin it here. But there's potentially something interesting about a 1960s Crown Royal. I'll just put it like that. And so it'll be part of the history, or at least the lore. So yeah, we're gonna go head to head. It's one of those brands that's been around for a while and it hasn't changed much outside of the factors we all know about wood and distillation and so forth.
I mean, even the bottle's
but
the same shape and
bottle,
everything.
yeah, the whole other than the tax strip, you wouldn't know which was which.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to do, it's kind of a fun one to do, just to kind of branch out and do something different. We did Canadian blended whiskey last year, which was pretty popular and pretty cool. So we're going to go with Crown. And after that's what, the Old Charter?
Old Charter, a 1978 Old Charter on August 2nd.
Okay, that's
non-chill filter, which will be interesting.
Yep. So that's an interesting one. That's we're going to get into the history of Old Charter for sure. We're also going to get into some of the chemical happenings that can happen with some of those. A lot of the old 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s lower proof bourbons, or all bourbons, were not chill filtered. And when you don't chill filter, you leave fats and lipids in the bottle, and under a certain proof point, those can show up in the glass. So we're going to take a look at that and just kind of walk through the history of Old Charter, which is kind of cool. It's another one of those maybe riches to rags brands. So we're going to go through that and also talk about some of that low proof non-chill filtering they used to do back then.
And then the last one on the books is just a week later. It'll be August 9th. And this is 1970s Iw Harper, and actually Jason Wickel on here was able to track down that the Dusty bottle for us. So, but you'll put together the usual stuff, Wes, all the history and all that on Iw Harper, correct?
Yep, that's gonna be a good one. That's a lot more historic brand, I think, that people give credit to it. Definitely the Bernheim's behind it, or if you've ever lived in Louisville and this area of Kentucky, their names are attached to a lot of things around Louisville and the surrounding counties and just Kentucky in general. That's there's been 2 historic Bernheim distilleries, one old and one current. And Iw Harper's big time popular brand back in the day. So we're going to sit down and enjoy a pour of that, see how it compares to what they're doing today with that brand.
A lot of, like you said, a lot of history there, and of course through the years, some cool branding things and stuff like that. Iw Harper lived through the decanter era too, so they've got some cool looking decanters. So yeah, there is a lot of interesting history there. So yeah, should be a fun one.
Yeah, and we don't have them on the books, but I've got another 3 or 4 lined up. I just got to work out with Steve dates and times.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still doing the Willet Dusty. So I have it's either late 50s, early 60s. I can't remember, but I've got a old Bardstown that was actually made by Willet back in the day when original Willet
When they were
was
still,
there,
yeah,
when
really.
they were
distilling,
doing their
yeah,
own
yeah.
distillation. It's not
Yeah.
the sourced, 90s, 2000 stuff, which is
That's
good
cool.
stuff on its own, but this is going to be a true comparison of what Drew and his group are doing today in the same facility of what his dad and his granddad and those guys were doing
Years
back
ago.
in
Yeah,
the
that's cool.
back in the well, actually what the Willets were doing, not even his granddad, what the Willets were doing back in the day. Proofs are the same. I think the mash bills are the same. So that's going to be a true one-to-one comparison. And it's a brand we haven't been into yet. It's pretty cult popular, if nothing else. So we're going to do that one. That'll probably be the next one on the list that hasn't been scheduled. And then I've got a couple other fun things. I just haven't decided which one we want to do yet, but we're going to try to tag something. We may go back. I know there's a lot of people. Raise your hand if you did the Stitzel-Weller cabin still we did last year. We did a cabin still to Canada.
Okay.
Bill, was that a don't want to, or you don't know if you did?
I don't know if I did.
All right. So I think I'm going to I think we're going to do that one again, simply because that's a very popular polarizing bourbon. It's definitely a extremely polarizing history. And this time it's not going to be cabin still. Previously, I kept the history more to the cabin still brand. I didn't get a ton into the Stitzel-Weller history. I did get some into it. This one is going to be an old Fitzgerald from Stitzel-Weller. Yeah, that poked Jason's head up there. So that one I'll probably go full on into. Obviously, old Fitz, Stitzel-Weller, PH Stitzel. It's going to be a pretty in-depth history there because it's old Fitz and not cabin still was made there, but it was kind of one of those subsidiary brands that had kind of its own branch out story that we told last time. So the history is going to be different. Some of it will be overlap, but more importantly, the whiskey is going to be amazing, and we'll find a current old Fitz or maybe a larceny barrel proof or something to put up against it. So we can really find out. We'll find something good to put up against it. So yeah, we're going to do that. And then I think was anybody on when we did the Dusty Makers? Rob was.
I don't know. Maybe.
Bill loses track. Bill, I think you've been on almost all of them.
Yeah, I think Bill's been.
I
there.
think so.
Yeah.
But
Unless
we
he had a
may,
conflict,
yeah, the Dusty Makers was super popular. We may do that again later in the year, but I've got some other things. I've got as much as we want to go through here. We can.
One of the cool things that I've noticed is that even though there's layers, one brand connects with another brand, connects with another brand. I think it's just cool. I mean, because I don't know. It's just cool as hell.
Oh, you know what, Steve? I'm sorry. We're not going to do the Makers. We're going to do a medley.
Medley. Okay.
Yep. We're going to do it. So what we're going to do is the new version of medley is the same distillery. Obviously, it's Green River, and they've got their first bourbon out. I think it's really good. So what we're going to do is it's the same distillery, obviously new ownership, years and years gone by, but we're going to do, I have to check and see, it's at least 70s, probably 70s, 60s, somewhere in that area. But we're going to do a medley against what they're doing in that distillery today is Green River.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I forgot about that one. I knew there was one more and I couldn't think of what it was.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get those scheduled and I'll get that out to you. In the meantime, we will, of course, send out an email after this event that'll have a link to the recording that is available for all our folks that couldn't make it tonight. And hopefully they'll be playing along at home and voting and everything like that. And I'll have the links for the 3 events that we do have live. And then I'll get back with you guys later when we get those.
Steve, can we give a teaser as to what we talked about earlier tonight? Not the specifics, but just a teaser that we got to. So one thing that we're doing here in the late summer and fall, we're for sure going to do one in St. Louis. The other one we're going to do probably in Kentucky at one of our friends' distilleries. But we're going to do a live Dusty tasting / class. Where obviously I know there's a lot of I ship all these samples out, so I know where people live. There's a lot of people that live nowhere close, but we have a lot of people in the Missouri, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky region that if you wanted to join us, each event we're going to have 3 different Dusties for the for the one in St. Louis. We're probably gonna have one Kentucky Dusty, but I'm gonna try to do something a little more localized to that region and maybe grab something out of the old Peoria or Pekin, American Distilling or United Distilling facilities there, or maybe an old McCormick from Missouri or something like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a live session like this, but it's I'm going to pull some historic pictures and do a PowerPoint kind of walk through. So we got a visual as well as go through the history. And obviously we're going to be tasting 3 Dusties in that event. And then if anybody has an old bottle and they want to bring it and let me take a look at it, evaluate it for you or whatever, you feel free to do that. But it's going to be,
we do a little
pretty cool
antiques roadshow afterwards where you can bring your bottles and have get a value assigned to them if you're doing that. So that'll be at the ABV Barrel Shop, which is the new barrel shop opens July 9th. Here in St. Louis, Missouri. And it's going to be a fun event. And that's the type of things that we're going to be offering. So that'll be the first one. That'll actually be in late July. And then we'll look at probably early fall doing one in Kentucky. And then probably regularly, this will be on the regular because I think it's going to be really popular. It's not something that people typically get to do, to taste that old whiskey, and especially a class that to get to taste 3 of them. And we'll probably just keep rotating them through St. Louis, which works out pretty well. It's close enough where Wes can get here in pretty short order. And then he's, we can stay at my house, which is pretty good. So it helps keep the expenses low to make this viable. So that's pretty cool.
And drink all of his whiskey too. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, of course. We've got plenty here.
That's the best part.
No problem. There's plenty here. Mr. Bill has seen. He can testify.
So yeah, you heard it here first. That's a sneak peek. We're going to do a couple of live events later this year. I think it'll be fun. So.
Absolutely. On that note, one last round of applause for Wes. Great job as always. We'll say goodbye for now. For our folks that are watching the recording, goodbye to you. And I'll stick around if you've got any questions, want to talk bourbon, anything like that. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.